Today's advanced English story begins on a remote tropical island where a woman searches for a mysterious relic her grandfather once described. I'll speak clearly, and you can download the transcript if you want to follow along. Okay, let's get started. The small boat drifted toward Balmy Island just as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in soft gold. Sandra leaned over the side, watching the water shift from deep blue to turquoise. She had seen pictures of the island before, but nothing prepared her for the real thing. Palm trees bending gently in the wind, cliffs covered with foliage, and a thin line of white sand stretching along the shore. She wasn't here for a vacation. She was here because of a story her grandfather used to tell her when she was a child. According to him, Balmy Island had an old lantern hidden somewhere in its jungle. It wasn't magical, since it was just a regular lantern, he had told her, but it had guided lost sailors for generations. "If you ever find it," he told her, "you'll understand why our family remembers it." Sandra never knew what he meant, but after he passed away, she found a small map tucked inside one of his notebooks. It showed the outline of Balmy Island and a single mark deep in the center of the island. She didn't know if the map was real or if it was just part of his stories, but she wanted to find out. Therefore, Sandra traveled there by boat. Thankfully, it was not a long boat ride from the main city she was staying in. When the boat touched the sand of the island, Sandra stepped onto the beach. The air smelled like vegetation and was very humid. Parrots called from the trees. She tightened her backpack straps and walked toward the jungle path. The trail was narrow, but someone had clearly used it recently since fresh leaves were matted onto the muddy soil. Ferns brushed her legs as she moved deeper into the island. The tree canopy above filtered the sunlight, making it less intense on her face. Every few minutes, she stopped to listen to the sounds of the island. She smiled as she heard the waves in the distance, the insects buzzing, and the birds chirping. After an hour of walking, she reached a clearing. In the center stood a massive banyan tree with roots twisting like ropes. Her grandfather's map showed a mark near a tree just like this. She approached it slowly, running her hand along the bark. Something glinted behind one of the roots. She crouched down and pulled out a small metal compass. It was old, scratched, and warm from the sun. When she opened it, she saw tiny words inside that said, "Keep going." She lifted her eyebrows. She knew that someone had left it there intentionally. Sandra looked around the clearing again. On the far side, she noticed a second path that was almost invisible due to the thick vines. She pushed through and followed it. The path ended at a waterfall. It wasn't tall, but the water poured into a crystal clear pool with tiny fish darting around. To the right of the waterfall, she saw a dark opening that appeared to be a cave. She hesitated only a moment before skirting the pool on the mossy rocks to reach the cave. Inside, the cave was cool and quiet. The walls were smooth, shaped by centuries of flowing water, and there, resting on the floor, was the lantern. It was bronze-colored and heavily weathered. Sandra lifted it carefully. It felt heavier than she expected. When she tilted it, something inside shifted, like a small weight sliding from one side to the other. She realized then that the lantern wasn't only meant to guide sailors with light, it was also meant to guide them with sound. When shaken gently, it produced a low and steady tone, like a distant bell. This meant that someone on the shore could shake it in a thick fog or on a stormy night, and sailors would be able to find their way to shore even if they couldn't see its light. Her grandfather had never explained this part, but she understood now why he said the lantern mattered. It had a dual function, taking into account the various weather conditions of a tropical island. Sandra carried the lantern out of the cave and sat near the waterfall. The island felt different now. It was less mysterious and more familiar. She didn't know yet what she would do with the lantern or who she would tell about it, but she knew she would keep it safe, just as her grandfather had hoped. As the sun climbed higher, she stood, holding the lantern close. She still had to make her way back through the jungle, back to the beach, and back to the mainland. But, for the first time since she arrived, she felt completely at home. And somewhere above her, hidden in the branches, a single parrot squawked loudly as if it were welcoming her to the island. Alright guys, I hope you understood today's story. I would love it if you gave this video a like, and I am open to any ideas you might have for a future story. I could also include specific vocabulary in future stories that you might want me to reinforce in context. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.